I still remember that night. The air was cold, but not because of the weather. It was the kind of cold that seeps into your chest when the world you've known begins to change in front of your eyes. I was sitting alone by the window, listening to the rain. And then he walked in. His face looked tired, as if he had been carrying something for years. And when he finally spoke, what he confessed that night changed everything. I'm not the kind of woman who cries easily. I've lived through many storms in my life. I've raised a family, worked hard, loved deeply, and lost quietly. But that night, I felt something I had never felt before. A mixture of disbelief and a quiet kind of heartbreak that doesn't make a sound. I should probably start from the beginning. Because when a story like this ends, it always begins much earlier than we think. For as long as I can remember, my world revolved around my family. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other's names. Our home wasn't big, but it was warm. The kitchen smelled of cardamom and ginger tea. The front porch creaked when someone walked across it. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I met my husband David when I was 23. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, his voice carried a quiet strength. We built a life together, slowly, like two hands folding warm bread. We didn't have much, but we had each other. 2 years after our wedding, our son Ethan was born. The first time I held him, I remember whispering, "I'll protect you, no matter what." I didn't know back then how heavy that promise would become. Ethan grew up to be the kind of boy who could make anyone smile. He had his father's calmness and my stubbornness. Every corner of the house had traces of him. His toys near the sofa, his tiny handprints on the wall, his laughter echoing in the evenings. David worked long hours, and I spent most of my time raising Ethan. I used to think motherhood was a series of busy mornings and tired nights, but it was more than that. It was learning to love without expecting anything in return. It was holding someone close and slowly learning to let go at the same time. As Ethan grew older, our house changed with him. School shoes in the hallway, soccer balls rolling across the living room, homework scattered on the kitchen table, and always the sound of us, a family, living, breathing, growing together. Every Sunday morning, we'd sit by the big window and watch the rain. Ethan loved the rain. He'd press his little face against the cold glass and whisper, "Mama, the rain is talking to me." I'd laugh and tell him, "Then listen carefully. Rain only talks to those who are gentle." I thought those moments would last forever, but life has a quiet way of shifting beneath your feet, not all at once, but slowly, like a river carving stone. The first real change came when Ethan left for college. The house that was once filled with noise became painfully quiet. David and I tried to adjust. We had dinners in silence, sometimes talking about Ethan, sometimes not talking at all. He called every week. He told me about his classes, his friends, and sometimes about a girl named Anna. The first time he mentioned her, his voice softened. I didn't miss the way he paused before saying her name. "She's different, Mom," he said once. I smiled even though my heart ached just a little. Different is good, I told him. And I meant it. I wanted him to have a life of his own, one that was bigger than our little house, bigger than my kitchen and the rain-streaked windows. A year later, Ethan brought Anna home. She had kind eyes, the kind that made you feel like she was listening even when she wasn't speaking. She was polite, quiet, and just a little shy. I remember making her tea and noticing how carefully she held the cup. She reminded me of myself when I first met David's mother, nervous, trying to do everything right. Ethan watched her the way his father used to look at me. I could see it in the way his shoulders relaxed around her. Love has its own language, and theirs was soft, quiet, and young. That night, after they left the table, I sat alone in the kitchen and whispered, "He's growing up." And somehow, that simple truth made the house feel both full and empty at the same time. A year later, Ethan and Anna got married. It was a small ceremony in the garden behind our house. David built a wooden arch. I made Ethan's favorite soup, and the rain blessed the day with a gentle drizzle. I remember holding his hand before the ceremony and saying, "Take care of each other. That's all that matters." Anna kissed my cheek and whispered, "I'll take care of him, I promise." I believed her. I wanted to. They moved to the city shortly after. I told myself it was normal. Children grow. They leave. They build their own lives. But even when your mind accepts it, your heart still counts the empty chairs at dinner. David and I grew older. The years folded into quiet mornings and soft evenings. Ethan called less often, but I held on to every word. Every "Hi, Mom" felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. Then, little by little, things began to shift. It started with small things, shorter calls, fewer visits, missed holidays. When I asked if everything was okay, Ethan would say, "I've just been busy. Mom, you know how it is." And yes, I did know. Life gets busy, work piles up, people change. But what I didn't expect was the quiet ache that came with every unanswered call and every delayed message. David noticed it too, though he never said much. He would sit on the porch and wait for Ethan's car to pull up, sometimes for hours, and when it didn't, he'd quietly go back inside. I tried to keep hope alive. I told myself, they'll come next week. Maybe they're just tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down, I felt it. The distance between us was growing, and I didn't know how to stop it. It was late autumn when Ethan finally called. His voice was soft but heavy. "Mom," he said, "can we come over this weekend? I need to talk to you." I didn't ask questions. I just said yes. I spent the next 2 days cleaning every corner of the house, making his favorite pie, and setting the table like it was a holiday. I even placed fresh flowers by the window where he used to watch the rain. When they arrived, Ethan hugged me, but it was quick, almost hurried. Anna smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We sat at the table, the three of us. The rain began to fall again, softly tapping on the window like an old friend trying to remind me of better days. Ethan didn't touch his food. His hands were shaking slightly. Anna kept staring at her cup of tea. And then he said it. "Mom," he whispered, "there's something I need to tell you." Ethan's hands were resting on the table, but they wouldn't stay still. I could see the way his fingers tapped nervously against the wood. It was the same way he used to tap on his school desk when he was afraid to tell me about a bad grade. But this time something was different. This wasn't the nervousness of a little boy. This was the heaviness of a grown man carrying a secret. I held my breath. My heart beat slower, almost painfully slow. I tried to keep my face calm, gentle, the way mothers do when they want their children to know it's safe to speak. "Go on," I whispered. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." Anna looked up at him briefly. It was a small glance, but I caught it. It was the kind of look people give when they know the words that are about to be spoken will change something forever. Ethan finally inhaled. His eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. He just looked tired. "Mom," he began, "I've been keeping something from you for a long time." My chest tightened. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word was made of glass. "I didn't mean to, but things just got complicated, and I didn't know how to tell you." I leaned forward. "Ethan, whatever it is, I'd rather know the truth than live in the dark." He nodded, swallowing hard. Then he whispered the words that would change everything between us. "Anna and I are moving far away. And it's not just for a while. We've decided to build our life somewhere else. Away from here." For a moment, I didn't move. The sound of the rain filled the room like a second heartbeat. The world felt smaller, like it was closing in around me. I forced a small smile, even though my fingers trembled. "That's big news," I said softly. "Where?" "Across the country," Anna finally spoke. "A new city. A fresh start," I nodded slowly. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words didn't come. I had spent years preparing myself for him to grow up, to live his own life, to make his own choices. But I hadn't prepared myself for this kind of distance. "When?" I asked. "In a few weeks," Ethan replied. "I got a job offer there. A good one. We've already made some plans. A few weeks. A few weeks to pack up years of Sunday mornings, late-night talks, and quiet hugs at the doorway." "I should have told you earlier," he said, his voice breaking a little. "But I didn't want to hurt you." I could feel my throat tightening. "You didn't hurt me by telling me," I whispered. "You hurt me by waiting so long." There was a long silence between us. Not loud, not angry, just a quiet ache. I stared at the table, at the small water ring left by his untouched glass. I thought about the tiny boy who used to leave fingerprints all over these same wooden planks. The boy who used to say, "Mama, don't ever let me go." And now here he was, letting go first. The days that followed were slow, like walking through thick fog. Ethan and Anna stayed the weekend. We tried to act normal, but everything had shifted. The conversations were shorter, the silences longer. I'd catch him staring at his phone, probably reading messages about the new apartment, the job, the future. One afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, Anna walked in. She hesitated at the doorway. "Can I help?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Of course." She picked up one of Ethan's old t-shirts from the basket. I could tell she recognized it. It was the one he wore on their first trip together. She smiled faintly, almost shyly. "He's really excited," she said. "About the move, about everything." I nodded, but my hands kept folding. "I know. I hope you understand," she added after a pause. "This isn't about leaving you behind. We just need space to build our own life." I finally looked at her. She wasn't being cruel. She was just being honest. She wanted a life that belonged to them, not to the house he grew up in. "I do understand," I said softly. "I just wish I had a little more time to prepare my heart." Her eyes softened. She nodded, and for a moment, we both stood there. Two women who loved the same man in different ways. Ethan spent the rest of that weekend sorting through his old room. He opened drawers, flipped through dusty photo albums, laughed at old birthday cards. I watched from the doorway. He didn't see the way I held my hands together to keep them from shaking. He held up a small photo. One of him as a little boy, covered in mud, grinning wide. "Remember this?" he asked. I smiled. "You ruined those shoes that day," he laughed. Dad was so mad. The memory felt warm. But underneath that warmth was a quiet sting, like a goodbye hiding in a laugh. "Mom," he said suddenly, his tone changing. "I want you to know this isn't because I don't love you." I swallowed hard. "I know, it's just, I need to live my own life now." "I know, Ethan." He didn't hear the rest of what I whispered to myself. "I just thought your life would still have space for me in it." On their last night before leaving, we sat together in the living room. David had gone to bed early. It was just Ethan and me, like so many nights years ago when he'd sit cross-legged on the floor, talking about his dreams, but this time he was sitting like a man who had already chosen a path. "Mom," he said quietly. "There's something else." My heart skipped. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "I need you to understand that when we move, things will change." "What kind of things?" "We won't be able to visit often, at least not for a while, and I might not call as much. I need to give Anna my full attention. We want to build our own life together." I froze. It wasn't just about moving away. It was about stepping out of my life almost entirely. "You'll still call," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "Of course," he said, but there was a hesitation in his voice, just not as much. "Ethan," I said softly, "I've spent my whole life making sure you had everything you needed. I never asked for anything in return, but don't ask me to pretend this doesn't hurt." His eyes glistened. "I'm not asking you to pretend, I just need you to let me go. Let him go." The words echoed in my mind like footsteps in an empty hallway. I nodded, even though my chest felt like it was cracking in two. Later that night, I found Anna in the kitchen. She was standing by the sink, looking out at the rain. I walked in quietly. She turned when she heard me. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For everything. I know how much he means to you. I know this is hard." "It's not your fault," I said gently. "You didn't take him away. He chose to follow the life he wants. That's what love does." She blinked back tears. "I promise I'll take care of him." "I know you will," I said. "Just promise me one thing." "What is it?" "Promise me you won't let him forget where he came from." She nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "I promise." The morning they left was quiet. No big speeches, no drama, just quiet movements, bags zipped, shoes by the door, a faint smell of coffee. I stood on the porch as they loaded the last of their things into the car. The air was cold, crisp. Ethan hugged me tightly, longer than usual. "I love you, Mom," he whispered against my shoulder. I love you too, I whispered back. Always. Anna hugged me too. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. As the car drove away, I watched until the red lights disappeared down the road. The house behind me felt heavier, emptier, like all the air had been quietly taken away. I walked back inside. The rain started again. The days after they left were quiet in a way I had never known before. The house no longer smelled of coffee in the mornings. There were no shoes scattered by the door. No laughter echoing down the hallway. David tried to keep me company. He'd make tea in the evenings, and we'd sit together on the porch. But we both knew something had changed. Ethan called a few times in the first month. Short calls. Just updates about work, the apartment, the new city. I smiled through every call, even when the line went silent too quickly. But slowly, the calls became fewer. And then, one week, they didn't come at all. I thought I was prepared for an empty nest. I thought I could handle silence. But I wasn't prepared for the kind of silence that makes you feel invisible. I started setting 2 plates at dinner instead of 3. I stopped checking my phone as often. I avoided walking into his old room because it still smelled like him. David told me, he's just busy, and I nodded. But inside, a part of me whispered, busy isn't the same as forgetting, but forgetting begins with being too busy. Weeks turned into months. And then, one night, the phone rang. It was Ethan, but his voice didn't sound like the boy I had raised. It sounded heavier, older, and afraid. Mom, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. The same sentence he'd spoken weeks before, but this time, the tone was different. I held the phone tighter. What is it? There was silence on the other end, just his breath, and then he whispered, I should have told you the whole truth before I left. My heart dropped. What truth, Ethan? I didn't just move away for a job, he said. There's more to it. Something I've been hiding. I closed my eyes. I could feel the cold wind slipping through the cracks of the window, the house holding its breath with me. Ethan, I whispered, whatever it is, I'm still your mother. Tell me. And that's when everything started to unravel. I could hear Ethan breathing on the other end of the line. It wasn't just the sound of someone trying to find the right words. It was the sound of someone standing at the edge of a truth they had been avoiding for too long. I sat on the couch in the dark, the phone pressed to my ear. The living room smelled faintly of old wood and the tea I'd made hours earlier but never drank. David had gone to bed. The house was quiet, but my heart was anything but. Ethan, I said softly, whatever it is, just say it. He took a long breath. Mom, I didn't just move away because of the job. That's only part of it, I waited. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. There were things that happened, things I couldn't bring myself to tell you. I thought if I left, maybe it would all just fade. My stomach tightened. What things? Another long pause. I could almost hear him swallowing, gathering strength. It's about Anna, he whispered. I closed my eyes. My hands grew cold. What about Anna? I asked carefully. We've been going through things, he said. For a long time. Even before we got married, I felt my breath catch in my throat. Ethan, what kind of things? She didn't want me to stay close to home, he said finally. She didn't like how often I talked to you. The words landed quietly, but they hit hard. Not loud, not sharp, but heavy. Why? I whispered. She said I was too attached, Ethan continued. His voice was breaking now, like a child caught between love and guilt. She said I needed to choose where my loyalty belonged, to the family I came from, or the family we were trying to build. For a moment, everything inside me went still. I didn't speak. I didn't even move. She made me promise that if we were going to build a life together, he said, I needed to keep some distance. She said it wasn't healthy. The way I always came running back home. I held the phone tightly. I felt something deep inside me quietly shift. I thought I'd cry. I thought I'd scream, but I didn't. I just sat there in silence, the weight of his words sinking slowly into the cracks of my heart. Ethan, I whispered, why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't want to hurt you, he said. I thought maybe it would get better after the move. But it didn't. The rain outside grew heavier, almost as if the sky was listening too. She told me last night, he continued, that she doesn't want to come back here anymore. I felt my chest tighten. She doesn't want to visit? She said this house. It makes her feel like she's standing in the middle of something she'll never fully belong to. I swallowed slowly. But this isn't just my house, Ethan. It's your home. I know, he said, his voice trembling. But she doesn't see it that way. She feels like this place is a reminder that I'll always choose you. And is she wrong? I asked gently. The silence that followed was long. Too long. No, he whispered. She's not wrong. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. I knew what this was. I had seen it in stories, heard it from neighbors, but I never thought it would live inside my own home. Mom, Ethan whispered, I'm trying. I'm trying so hard to keep everyone happy, but I feel like I'm being pulled apart. I could hear the pain in his voice. The same boy who once held my hand to cross the street was now standing in the middle of two worlds, unsure where to place his heart. Ethan, I said softly, you shouldn't have to choose between me and her. But that's exactly how it feels, he said. And I'm tired. I'm so tired. Have you talked to her about it? He gave a short, bitter laugh. Every talk turns into a fight. She says she wants a future where she doesn't feel like a guest in my life. I bit my lip. The truth was cruel in its simplicity. She saw me not as a part of his life, but as a shadow standing too close. As he spoke, my mind wandered back to a night years ago. Ethan was 9 years old. He'd fallen off his bicycle and scraped his knees badly. He came running into the house crying. I held him close, cleaned his wounds, kissed his forehead and whispered, as long as I'm here, you'll never have to face pain alone. I didn't realize that one day, pain would come in a shape I couldn't fix with a kiss or a bandage. Pain would come wearing a soft voice and a quiet ultimatum. Mom, Ethan said, his voice cracking, I don't want to lose you. You won't lose me, I whispered. I'll always be here. But I can feel it happening, he said. Every time we argue, every time she brings your name up, it feels like a wall is going up between us. I hate it. I hate feeling like I have to hide how much I love you. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. I wanted to reach through it, hold his face like I used to, and tell him it would all be okay. But this wasn't a scraped knee. This was a life that had grown complicated. I love Anna, he whispered, but I also love you. And it shouldn't feel like loving one means losing the other. Tears finally welled up in my eyes. Not from anger, not from betrayal, from something quieter, the helplessness of watching the person you raised struggle with a pain you can't ease. Then he said it. The thing I wasn't prepared for. She gave me an ultimatum, Mom. My breath caught. She said either we create distance from you, or she doesn't see a future together. I didn't say anything. My hand went cold against the phone. The sound of the rain outside felt louder than his voice. I tried to fight it. Ethan whispered, but I love her. And I don't want to lose her. And me? I whispered. The line went quiet. So quiet I could hear the tiny creaks of the house. I thought, he said finally, you'd understand. The quiet in my chest cracked open. I wanted to tell him that I understood. I wanted to tell him that this was life, that people change, that children grow up and love others in ways they can't explain. But what came out instead was something softer. Something truer. Ethan, I whispered, I carried you before I even knew your name. I've watched you fall asleep, cry, laugh, and grow. I gave everything I had to make sure you'd have the strength to love someone the way you love her. But I never thought loving someone would mean turning your back on me. I'm not turning my back on you, he said quickly. Then what is this? He didn't answer. He couldn't. I felt a tear slip down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. I didn't move. The rain outside softened into a mist. The house felt like it was breathing around me, full of echoes of the life I had built for him. I thought about the day I taught him how to ride a bike, the day he left for college, the day he told me he'd found someone he loved. Each of those moments were chapters in a book I thought I was writing with him. I didn't realize he'd started writing his own chapters, ones I wasn't a part of. The truth wasn't loud or cruel. It was quiet, simple, brutal in its stillness. He wasn't leaving me out of hatred. He was leaving me because love sometimes grows in different directions, and love, I realized, can hurt even when it's gentle. Days passed after that call. He said he'd come visit soon. He didn't. He said he'd call again next week. The phone never rang. Every morning I'd check my phone. Every evening I'd sit by the window, listening to the rain, waiting. Not for him exactly, but for the sound of his voice, the warmth of his presence, the small reminder that I still mattered. David saw the quiet in me. He'd sit beside me and hold my hand. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. One night, he said softly, "You have to let him live his life." "I know," I whispered, "but knowing doesn't make the ache any less." Weeks later, on a gray Saturday morning, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Ethan was standing there, alone, no Anna. His eyes were tired. His hair was a little messy, like he hadn't slept. He gave me a small smile, the kind that hides a storm behind it. "Hi, Mom." I froze. "Ethan, what are you doing here? Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. He walked into the house slowly, looking around as if it was both familiar and distant at the same time. The smell of rain followed him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where his confession had started weeks earlier, wrapped his hands around a mug of tea, but didn't drink. "I can't sleep," he said quietly. "I can't eat. I feel like I'm tearing myself in half. Ethan, she wants me to choose, Mom. She doesn't say it that way, but I can hear it in every word." I leaned forward. "And what do you want?" He stared at his hands. "I want to stop feeling like a bad son and a bad husband at the same time." "Ethan," I said softly, "you're not a bad son. You're just a man who's trying to love in two directions." His shoulders shook slightly. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I hate this." I reached across the table and touched his hand. It was cold. "Love shouldn't feel like a war," I whispered. "Not this kind." He looked up at me then, his eyes red. "I don't want to lose either of you." And that was the truth. He wasn't choosing one over the other. He was breaking under the weight of being forced to. I could have asked him to stay. I could have begged. I could have told him to choose me. But I didn't. I looked at my son, the man he had become, and I saw the little boy in him too. The boy who trusted me to guide him. And in that moment, guiding him didn't mean pulling him closer. It meant letting him walk away. "Ethan," I whispered, "I don't want you to choose." His eyes widened. "Mom, I love you," I said. "And because I love you, I don't want to be the reason your heart feels split in two. Go where your life takes you. Build the life you want. Just don't forget where you came from." Tears slipped down his cheeks. "I don't deserve you." I squeezed his hand gently. "You're my son. That's not something you have to deserve. It just is." He lowered his head and cried quietly. I held his hand. I didn't say another word. That morning was the turning point, not because everything was fixed, but because something inside both of us finally broke open. He didn't have to hide anymore, and I didn't have to pretend I was okay. He left that afternoon, but the weight of the silence between us wasn't the same. It wasn't a wall anymore. It was an understanding. And sometimes, understanding is the beginning of healing, even if it's slow, even if it still hurts. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, not erasing them, just softening them enough so that the pain no longer cuts every time you breathe. Weeks passed after Ethan's visit. At first, the silence between us remained, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the kind built from hurt or distance, but the kind that quietly waits for something new to grow. I stopped checking my phone every night. I stopped sitting by the window, waiting for his calls. Instead, I learned to sit with the quiet, to let it be a space, not a wound. Somewhere in that stillness, something inside me began to heal. Healing didn't arrive in a single moment. It came in little things, like the way the house no longer felt empty. Just quiet, like the way I started noticing the morning sun painting the kitchen floor in gold again, like the way David's laughter filled the rooms where echoes used to live. One morning, I was hanging laundry in the backyard. The air was warm. A soft breeze carried the smell of earth and flowers. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. David walked out with 2 cups of tea, handing one to me. "You look different," he said gently. "Do I?" He nodded. "Less like you're holding your breath, I smiled softly. Maybe I finally remembered how to breathe. He placed a hand on my shoulder. He'll find his way back. They always do. That afternoon, the phone rang. My heart did its old trick, skipping just a little. When I answered, his voice filled the line. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Ethan." I tried to keep my voice steady, casual, like it wasn't the first time in weeks I was hearing him. "I'm sorry," he said softly, "for disappearing." "You don't have to be sorry," I replied gently. "You're living your life." "But I shouldn't have shut you out like that." Silence wrapped around us. A softer one this time. "How are you?" I asked. "I'm trying," he said. "It's been hard." "I know." He hesitated, then whispered, "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. She's been distant too," he said. "Anna, she's not happy. I thought giving her what she wanted would fix it. But it just made the space between us feel bigger." I listened, letting him empty the weight in his chest. "She asked me last night why I look so tired all the time," he continued. I told her, "Because I'm tired of pretending I don't miss my own mother." My breath caught softly. I didn't expect those words. We didn't talk about ultimatums that day. We didn't talk about guilt or blame. Instead, we talked about small things. About the new cafe he liked. About the neighbor's cat that had adopted their porch. About the way autumn was settling into the city. It wasn't everything, but it was something, and sometimes something is exactly where healing begins. Before hanging up, he whispered, "Can I come visit?" "Soon?" I smiled into the phone. "Of course." When the call ended, I didn't cry like I used to. I just stood in the kitchen, letting the warmth of that little moment wrap around me like sunlight on skin. A week later, Ethan and Anna came to visit together. When the car pulled up in the driveway, I stood at the door, unsure what to expect. But when I saw her step out beside him, holding his hand, something in me eased. She looked nervous, not cold, not distant, nervous. That mattered. Ethan squeezed her hand gently before walking toward me. "Hi, Mom." "Hi," I whispered. Anna gave a small smile. "Hi, Mrs. James." "Come in," I said softly. The house smelled like freshly baked bread and jasmine tea that morning. I'd set the table with their favorite things, not because I was trying to prove anything, but because love lives in details. We sat together at the table. The air was careful at first. Every word was measured, every silence slightly stiff. But beneath that stiffness, something fragile and real was trying to breathe. I asked Anna about her work. She answered, hesitant at first, then slowly easing into comfort. She asked me about the garden. I showed her the new rose bush I'd planted by the fence. Ethan watched us, quiet but hopeful. After lunch, when he went to the shed to fix a leaky faucet, it was just me and her sitting in the kitchen. She played with the edge of her mug. "I know you probably don't like me very much." The honesty caught me off guard. "Why would you think that?" She gave a weak smile. "Because I've made things hard for him." "For you," I didn't deny it. "It hasn't been easy." "I know." Her voice trembled. "I didn't grow up with close family like yours. When I saw how much he loved you, I felt like I didn't belong, like I was standing outside a circle I couldn't enter." I stared at her, really looked at her. Not as the woman who had taken my son away, but as someone standing in her own quiet fear. "I never wanted to take him away from you," she said softly. "I just wanted to know that I wasn't competing." I took a slow breath. "Anna, you were never competing. This isn't a contest. You're part of his heart in a way I can't be. And I'm part of it in a way you can't. That's how love works." Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know how to live with that. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Then maybe we learn together." She looked at me, really looked, and nodded. When Ethan walked back in, something in the air had changed. Anna stood, walked over to me, and before I could say anything, she hugged me. Not stiff, not polite, a real hug. A quiet, trembling, honest hug. For a second, I didn't know what to do. Then I wrapped my arms around her. Ethan froze in the doorway, eyes wide, then slowly smiled. And for the first time in a long time, the house didn't just feel warm. It was warm. They stayed the whole weekend. We cooked together, laughed in the kitchen when the soup spilled over. Took slow walks by the old oak tree near the field. It wasn't perfect. Nothing suddenly erased the pain of the past months. But it didn't have to be perfect. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a quiet unfolding. One night after Anna went to bed, Ethan and I sat on the porch under the stars. "She likes it here," he said quietly. I smiled. "I can tell," he hesitated. "Thank you for not making me choose." I looked at him, my heart full of the boy and the man he had become. "I love you too much to ever do that." He blinked hard, looking away. "I don't deserve you," I laughed softly. "You say that a lot." He smiled faintly. "Because it's true." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "No, Ethan, you don't have to deserve me. I'm your mother." "That's not a prize. That's a promise." The next morning, as they packed the car to leave, there was no heaviness in my chest this time. No desperate ache, just a quiet knowing. He hugged me tight. "I'll call," he said. I smiled. "I know." Anna hugged me too, whispering, "Thank you for giving me a place here." I held her close. "You don't have to earn it. Just be part of it." They drove off, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't watch the car disappear with tears in my eyes. I just stood on the porch, breathing in the morning air, letting the sun warm my face. Weeks turned into months. Calls became regular again. Visits more frequent. Some days, it was just a quick "Hi, Mom." Some days, it was long conversations about nothing and everything. But each call carried something steady, a bridge rebuilt. Anna sent me pictures of their new apartment. I sent her recipes she asked for. We found our rhythm, not perfect, but real. One evening, I got a photo of them at the park. Anna was holding Ethan's arm, laughing. My son looked at peace, not torn, not tired, just home. And maybe that's what healing really is, not going back to how things were, but creating something new together. Love doesn't always look like we imagine it will. Sometimes it's loud and easy, sometimes it's quiet and complicated, but real love, the kind that survives distance, pride, and fear, doesn't ask us to fight for ownership. It asks us to make space. That night, when Ethan confessed everything, I thought it was the end of something. But now I see it wasn't an ending at all. It was a turning point, the moment when love stopped being a battle and became a bridge. Sometimes I sit on the porch in the evenings with a cup of tea, watching the world settle down. The street is quiet, the air cool, and the stars always seem a little brighter on nights like these. It's in these quiet moments that I find myself thinking about how everything changed. Not in a storm, but in a single night of honesty. Ethan's confession could have broken us completely. For a while I thought it had, but what I didn't realize then was that love, real love, doesn't always shield us from pain. Sometimes it walks straight through it, holding our trembling hands, refusing to let go. In the beginning, I wanted to fix everything. I wanted the hurt to disappear, the distance to close, the silence to end. I believed that love meant holding on tightly. But over time, I learned something far quieter and far stronger. Sometimes love means giving space. Sometimes love means listening without defending. Sometimes love means waiting with open arms, not clenched fists. I think back to the night of his confession, the weight of his voice, the trembling in his words, and the way my heart cracked open, not to break, but to make room. If I had responded with anger, that moment might have been the last thread between us. But by staying, by listening, by simply being there, I gave him something more powerful than a reaction. I gave him a place to return to. Today, Ethan and Anna visit often. The house that once echoed with silence now hums softly with laughter, clinking cups and small, ordinary sounds. The sounds that make a house feel like a home again. Anna has started calling me Mom. Not every time, not in a forced way, but sometimes when she forgets to guard her heart. And each time it feels like a new stitch in a once-torn fabric. Ethan no longer carries that tired look in his eyes. He doesn't flinch between two worlds anymore, because now it's just one, and me, I no longer stand at the window waiting for calls. I don't carry that sharp ache in my chest. Instead, I carry something quieter, softer, the peace that comes from letting go of control, but never letting go of love. I've learned that families aren't just built by blood. They're shaped by forgiveness, patience, and time. They grow stronger when we allow space for more than one kind of love to exist. If you asked me back then whether I thought we'd ever find our way back, I might have said no. But here we are. Different, yes, but still together. The night Ethan confessed wasn't the end of our story. It was the night we stopped pretending everything was fine. It was the night truth walked into the room and sat down between us. And though truth can be uncomfortable, it can also be the beginning of something beautiful. So now, when I sit here under the stars, I think less about the pain and more about the journey, the long, uneven, gentle path that led us back to each other. If you're listening to this story tonight and your heart feels heavy, if someone you love has hurt you or drifted away, remember this: love is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet and patient, sometimes it waits in the soft spaces, and sometimes it finds its way back in the most unexpected ways. Don't be afraid of honesty. Don't be afraid of silence. And don't be afraid to keep the porch light on, because sometimes love just needs a way home.